Earning Labs presents a webinar on 5 essential on-page SEO factors to implement by Vaibhav. Before we begin, make sure to join our group and subscribe to the channel for more. Group link is available in the description below.
We're going to focus on essential on-page SEO factors. While there are multiple things when it comes to on-page, but then I will focus on majorly the key things right today. So about me, my name is Vaibhav and I'm not a digital guru. I think past couple of days we have seen a lot of discussion happening around people running courses and people charging a lot of money in terms of teaching digital marketing. But so I want to make it very clear at the beginning of this presentation that I am not a digital guru. I don't sell any courses. I don't intend to sell any courses ever, or at least in the very distant future that I see, I have no such plans. So I'm an engineer by degree, like I'm assuming most of you in the group must be, because हमारे देश में इंजीनियर की तादाद बहुत ज़्यादा है. And but by passion I'm a marketer and I love getting into details of things, understanding user psychology and all these things. I started my first company at the age of 22. So after college I worked in a startup for a year, and then I started my own startup which was more into web development, app development and social media marketing. This was 2009. Yes, I'm very old. So this was 2009 when I was 22, and we started doing this for companies, started doing this for brands, and then Khojdeal.com happened in 2016. We wanted to build a product which is there in the affiliate marketing space, and so we started building this product in towards the end of 2015, like December, and we launched it this in March 2016. So that's my background. I am a firm believer that you cannot do anything without your team. So that's a sneak peek into the team that we have at Khojdeal. The left side, as you see, we're celebrating one of our teammates' birthday. That's our office in Gurgaon. And on the right side, this is one of the all hands meeting that we do every month at work. So this is from one of those meetings in January or Feb, I believe. So that's my team, and I believe whatever you want to see today in terms of the things that we have implemented at Khojdeal, the results that you see, it's all a part of efforts by all of these people and not just me. So hence I wanted to share that with you before we get started. So coming on to the main topic of today, which is on-page SEO factors. So there are multiple on-page SEO things that we need to implement to ensure that our website is looked upon by Google in a very positive manner. They start from as simple as your URL. Let's say you want to do something in the SEO space. You can't have a URL that says coffee recipe.com. That's not a clear URL, and that it's not just about Google. It doesn't even tell the user what the website is all about. So starting from those small little things to very detailed technical things like page speed and AMP versions and sitemaps and all of that, schemas. So if I talk about like the major things that I have listed on the slide right now, right from page title to meta descriptions, heading tags, frequency, website content and structure. How do you structure your content? Is there any duplicate content on your website? Are you using the right canonical tags? So let's say you have a page that you want to rank on SEO, on-page SEO tools, but you have 10 pages that are giving the same signal to Google. So Google doesn't know which page is the page that you want to rank upon, which you want to display on the SERP results. So that is where canonical tags are used. Are the images that you're using on the page heavy, light? Is the user which is landing on your page after doing so much effort, are they staying or are they just bouncing off in a second or 2 or 10? So the list of things that we have to do in terms of on page is a very extensive list. I have noted down a couple of them over here, most of them which are very critical, and you can see that. And for today's webinar, we're going to focus on these 5 things, which is keyword research, because Google loves content. Google is not anymore a machine that was there in 2000, maybe 2004, 5. Search, can you put everyone else on mute? I can hear some people.
व्हेरिफिकेशन एक जास्त करावं लागते. सिनेमा ऍड करावं लागतं ना इकडच्या डोमेन मध्ये.
Sorry guys. So yeah, for today's PPT, we're going to focus on these key things: keyword research, because one, I believe, as I was saying, that Google is no more just a machine that looks at what kind of keywords have you added. It looks way beyond about around what keywords are there, what is the intent that you're writing the content for, what are the keywords around that primary keywords and all of that. So we're going to discuss in detail about that. We're going to talk about the structure, how we need to do, how do we need to structure our post, how do we need to interlink them, what is the internal linking structure that we should follow. We're going to talk about schemas. I'm sure in terms of Google results, you must have seen how schemas come. If you are searching for certain keywords, you would see a big block of search result on the top or at the bottom. So that's about schemas. We'll talk more about that. We'll definitely talk about page speed, and we'll talk about how we can optimize the performance, or how we can optimize the load speed of our website on a desktop and mobile perspective, so that it is not just for Google, but also for the users coming onto the website, that they are able to access the information that you have provided in a much easy and a smooth manner, which ultimately adds up to user experience, and it adds up to the experience that Google is trying to give to the end user, and hence Google would like you much more than the other websites. So let's get started. Talking about keyword research first of all. So when we write content, or when we think about what kind of content would go in a particular post, we distribute our keywords into primary keywords, secondary keywords, and supportive keywords, right? So we're going to talk about each of these in detail. The first is the primary keyword. So let's say if you want to write a blog post about men's wallet, brands in India. Now, how do we find the primary keywords for this page? And I am not explaining you any yarn that we have just read somewhere. I am telling you things that we follow at Coachdeal. We follow in our company. Our team follows for every post that goes on the blog, that goes on the website, and hence I'm sharing things that we do, and I'm only sharing things that we are doing, and we see results, and we see the impact of that on the search results. So nothing that you would see in this webinar would be something random that even we have not tried. These are all things that we have tried and implemented and seen the impact and results. So coming back to the keyword research, so what we usually do is we would start with a blank spreadsheet and start talking about as users, all of us, what are the kind of keywords that we would search for, what are the kind of questions we would think about when we are talking about that particular topic. So there's a spreadsheet. We start brainstorming within the team, content team and the SEO team sits together. They do this, and the next step, what we do is we go to the competitor's website. We see what are the trending pages, what are the top pages of that competitor in that particular domain. We use Ahrefs, which is a paid tool, and we check the URL that are ranking for the competition. And one thing that I think we do differently, which I have not heard a lot of people doing so far, we run a Google search ad on a very broad keyword and see what kind of user queries that we get on that ad. So I'm hoping most of you must be aware of the basic Google ads structure. When we run a broad keyword ad, let's say we run a keyword called men's wallet in a modifier, and when we run this ad, we get a lot of search terms around that phrase that we have added, and that usually tells us very, very confidently that what are the keywords that the users are searching for, and that really tells us the intent that user is searching for. So that's one tip that I want to give today. The first tip in terms of keyword research I want to share with everyone, which I have not heard a lot of people talking about, which I have not seen a lot of people doing around me. But this is something that we do for almost every blog post that we publish. We run a small ad. We spend around 500 to $1,000 to see what kind of search terms are coming when we run an ad like that. And that's a and it's a very fast way to get that data. Unless of course, we can go to the tools. We can go to Ahref. We can go to SimilarWeb. We can go to SEMrush. We can go to so many other tools. But when we run ads, we get the instant data of what the user is searching on that particular day. And that's another thing. We don't get any. You don't get any historical data. You get real-time data of that particular day in that current instance, and what are the people searching for. So that's one tip that I want to share with you when it comes to primary keyword research. Then what we next do is, of course, when we do this exercise in terms of Ahref and ads and everything, we get a huge list of keywords. So it's not, we cannot put all those keywords in the content. So what we do is we start the process of filtering down. First thing is we go to the Google Keyword Planner. We see what are the medium to high search volume keywords in that, because ultimately the objective of any blog or any website is to add value to the end user and ultimately make money from that. So if there are no searches on that keyword, there's no point adding that over there and ranking on that keyword, right? So we look for medium and high search volume keywords. That's one. Second, we also check for difficulty in competition. What are the other websites that are ranking for that? And if the kind of resources that we have would be able to, outgrow that particular competitor. Commercial intent, which is very, very critical. Again, as I said, there's no point ranking for a keyword that no one is searching for, or would not end up giving us money in the longer run. So in terms of primary keywords, an example that I've shown you on the right is men's wallet brands India. As you see, our Kojal.com has a blog which ranks on position 0 for this keyword. And we have, in terms of all these, in terms of publishing this blog, we have invested a lot of energies in finding the right content and publishing the right content and doing a lot of keyword research. Secondly, the second thing is that we do work secondary keywords. These are keywords that are around the primary keyword, and also they kind of support that in terms of the user queries. And the right way to find these is we look for related searches in Google. As you see, there's a screenshot over here that shows when I search for men's wallet brands in India, I get all these things that top luxury men's wallet brand, men's wallet Flipkart. Top wallet brands for men, and of course this changes based on the country that you're searching for. So you have to make sure that you're looking for the right secondary keywords in that particular country that you're trying to rank in. Google Trends data would easily tell us if a particular keyword trend is going up or down. Obviously, you want to invest on something that is going up. Auto suggest, so when you start typing on Google, let's say you start top men's wallet and you just pause, Google would give you auto suggestion in the search bar saying in India, online, and things like that. So we note down all those support secondary keywords that we get from that data. That is secondary keyword. Lastly, we look at supporting keywords. Now this is a very long list of keywords that we get from multiple sources. These are keywords that are around around the conversations that happen. So if you and me sit and talk about buying a wallet online or buying a men's wallet, what are the things that we would ask to each other, or we would talk about that particular subject, right? So this supporting keyword list is basically a long list of keywords and a long list of not just keywords but questions, FAQs, things around that are added and that the user is searching for. Again, it's very similar to doing a research for a primary keyword. We make a spreadsheet, as you see on the right side. We start making a spreadsheet where we start adding things that we come in. Then we check forums. Now, necessarily forums would not be the right place to look for when it comes to, let's say, men's wallet. But let's say when it comes to on-page SEO tools, or you're talking about ebook printing, or you're talking about any other topic of that sort, forums and Reddit is a very good source. In fact, Facebook groups are a very good source to check what is the user looking for, what is the audience exactly getting stuck at. And if you start answering those questions for the user, Google also starts appreciating that and starts posting your content much higher on the SERP rankings. Third is a tool that I want to share with everyone. I don't know how many of you know this. There's a tool called Answer the Public. What it does is you give it basically you give it a keyword, let's say men's wallet, and as you see on the right side, it would search for all the questions around that, all the prepositions around that, all the related search terms around that. So answerthepublic.com is the tool. You can open it, you can add a keyword over there of your niche that you are trying to rank on, of related to your blog post, and you will see a good list of suggestion keywords that you will get there, which will which should be a part of your content. And because it's going to be a long list, it's very critical to know what you want to include in your blog post, right? So do they answer any important questions? If you're searching all that information on your keyword, would this add any value to your research on that particular topic, right? Ideally, these have very low search volumes and low competition, hence they're easier to rank. But remember, this is not your primary keyword, this is your supporting keyword. So what happens is you start ranking for a good list of long tail keywords, and then that all that traffic adds up, all that value adds up, and Google eventually starts ranking your primary keyword as well. So that's the logic of having secondary and supporting keywords. The next question that logically comes in, and which I want to answer, is that where do we place these keywords, right? What are the priority areas, or where should we place what keywords? So we divide this into 4 groups, and this is all based on the importance that Google gives when it comes and crawls the data. Group A is basically the meta title and the page title. So if you see, our title says there's best wallets for men in India 2020 review and buying ad, right? And we are trying to rank for the keyword, or we are ranking for the keyword best wallets for men in India. H1 tag, again, if you see, we have on the blog post, you will see H1 tags which will have these keywords added on that. Body content is the next logical line wherein you would see all this content to come in. URL, because obviously when it comes to the slug that you use on the URL, that's very critical. So I think the URL would have this Khojil.com / whatever blog / men's wallet India, or best wallet men in India. That again tells Google that this URL is talking about this particular basically subject, and that is where it sees that. And with support of the other elements on the page, it total adds up the value to that whole thing. Group B is the H2, H3, H4 tags, which is what comes after the H1, which is subheadings and the subheadings under that. Anchor text, the links that you're giving. Group C, which is again the next in terms of importance, is which keywords are you putting in bold, what are the keywords that you're putting in italic, because see, Google is a machine. When it comes, it reads that data in a structured format, and when you give Google that format in a structured data, it is easier for it to understand. And if you see, even on this blog post, we have just updated our list of top 10 best wallets for men, and this is in bold as compared to the other content. And then we have highlighted or put in bold in brands like Tommy, Woodland, Urban Forest, Wild On, Hornbill, and more. Again, this is an indication to Google that we're trying to give that these are the keywords, or these are the things that we are talking about, and this is what we want you to answer the user when they're trying to search something like that. Group D is the schema. We will talk more about that, and hence I wanted to ensure that schema is included in this webinar. It is basically a structure that Google understands, or search engines basically understand much better when it comes to understanding what is the website, or what is a blog post all about. Open Graph is something that we need for all the social postings that we do. So if you pick up this link, or ideally if you have a blog post which you want to share on social media, let's say on Facebook or Twitter, when you post that link, it automatically generates an image, an article, a title, and a sub metadata. So Open Graph is basically a way to beautify that entire thing, to ensure things that you want to show there goes there. So for example, if I share this link on Facebook, not necessarily the title that will show up would be best wallets for men in India 2020. I can change it to anything that I want to show for the audience that is there on Facebook, right? So that gives me a leverage of publishing the content in the way that I want to. And of course, all that adds up to how we are structuring the content, how we are putting that content in the right places. So that's about the first thing that you wanted to talk, which is keyword research. I'll just recap quickly. We want to look upon primary keywords. We will use tools like Ahref. We basically do a lot of paid ads to understand the search terms that a user is doing. So maybe that's one thing that you want to note down. And then in terms of secondary, we look for the keywords that are closely related to the primary keyword and are easier to win as compared to the primary. And thirdly, supporting keywords kind of give that entire list of things that we want to include in the content that we are writing, and based on where you want to place those keywords. So for example, H1 tag and meta title should have our primary keyword. So if you see when I spoke the example about the bold tags, they're all supporting keywords that are there, because we're talking about brands like Tommy, Hillfire, Woodland, Urban Forest, Wildhorn, etc. These are all supporting keywords that we've added on the blog post. So that all goes in group C. Schema and Open Graph, we'll talk much in detail later. So yeah, that is what I want to share in keyword research. It is a very huge topic. I can spend an entire day telling you about how we do keyword research in terms of when it comes to a post. But this is what I shared today with you, is what we look as a framework in terms of looking at primary, secondary, and supporting keywords. And this is how we do this research even before we even start writing the content. Be it a 500-word article or be it a 1,000-word article, we always do this exercise before taking the step of writing content. So that is keyword research. Moving on to the next thing that I want to explain is the website structure. Is basically how you structure your post, how you internally link them. It's a concept that's called silo structures. So it is also related to the keyword discussion that we had right now. Just like we want to place primary keywords, secondary keywords, and supportive keywords. Google likes it when you want to rank on a particular thing. So let's say I have the example that I've shown here is, let's say I have a blog post that talks about best refrigerators in India, right? Now that can be a 1,000-word article. We're talking about the best refrigerators. We're talking about features in that and everything. Then what we do is we would write supporting articles, which are basically extension of this target URL, this post that we're trying to rank on. Why is that important? Because again, as I said, Google is no more just a machine who's coming and reading the code and just reading the keyword stuffing that you've done on the page. Google understands. Google wants to place a website on the top which is adding value to the user, right? It's not just Facebook. It's not just Google. It's also Facebook now. And I'm sure Serge and a couple of you people who do e-commerce would understand this. Facebook is on and off suspending pages and business managers, because for orders that are not meeting their quality standards, they go back to the user, ask them some questions of about what was the quality of the product, and did you like it, or did it reach you on time, and blah blah blah. And based on the feedback that they're getting from the users who have purchased the product, they are suspending Facebook account, they're suspending business managers. And that clearly just tells, and just one principle that they want to follow, that their user should not, the user should be happy, they should not feel cheated. And similar is the thing in case of Google when it comes to content. So as a mindset thing that I want to talk about over here is, if you want to do churn and burn websites, if you want to do keyword stuffing and just rank a website for some time and just leave it forever, these points, this webinar, these points that we're talking about would not help you, because what we are talking today is about people who want to be in this for a long term, people who want to build a brand for their website. And all these things are signals that Google get, and understands that someone who's running this website or this particular blog understands the value of the user and is genuinely trying to help the user in every possible manner they can, by publishing good quality, content for them. So coming back to the structure that we're talking about, the outlining that we do, for one article, for example, best refrigerator in India, we would write multiple articles, which we call supporting articles. So for example, if you want to write about best refrigerator in India, we would write supporting articles like best refrigerator under 20,000, best refrigerator brands in India, how to clean refrigerators in summers, best multi-door refrigerator, best Samsung refrigerator. And guess what? Where do we get these keywords from? We get these keywords from the Google ads that I just told you that we ran in the previous step, right? This is from the research that we have done in terms of keywords. This is from the research that we get from running Google ads, that when we are trying to reach out to user who is interested in buying a refrigerator, they're not just looking for keywords like, best refrigerator in India. They are looking for things much more than that, right? They're looking for, we want to, so there's, again, it's a concept of funnel, right? So it's a broad funnel wherein we are trying to get as many users as possible who are interested in that topic of refrigerator. And ultimately, if that target goal of that user, if that intent of that user is to buy a refrigerator, we want that user to read our content and go through our affiliate link and buy from Amazon, let's say, right? So again, this silo structure concept is basically, again, it's very similar to the funnel structure, and this is very similar to what we do in terms of capturing the audience from a long term, from a very wide range of keywords. And Google loves this, because when Google comes and reads the website, they say that, okay, this website is not just publishing about just selling refrigerators or putting a list of top 10 refrigerators in India. It is actually helping out users to get answers like how do we clean a refrigerator, or what are the brands that are there in India, or what are single door refrigerators and everything. So that's about the silo structure. This is an example of the structure that we have done on our website. I've taken screenshots, and you can go on the website and check. Again, a very similar, the same example as refrigerator that I told about. So if you see, we have articles like top 10 best refrigerator brands in India. So if you see, this is, how to clean a refrigerator that smells, top 10 refrigerator brands in India, best refrigerators under 30,000 in India, best multi-door refrigerator, best Samsung refrigerator, best side-by-side refrigerator, under 20,000 refrigerator, mini refrigerators, 10 best double door, under 15,000. So that's what I'm saying. I'm not sharing anything that we have not done. I'm sharing things that we have implemented on the website, and we have seen our authority and Google liking us much more after implementing all these things. So I hope that helps everyone. So that's one thing. Next, okay, so this is my favorite topic. Me being a techie guy by degree, as I told you guys earlier. For me, when it comes to technology, I love solving these issues, right? So I think one of you also mentioned that in the question before we start the webinar, that website speed, most of us know that is very critical element. And again, why do I say it's a very critical factor? Is it is not just about Google. So Google officially says that yes, your speed is a factor when it comes to ranking. You can go to the Google Webmaster blog, and that's a screenshot that I've added over here. Where it talks about speed and all the products and everything. So yes, Google definitely says that website speed is a very critical aspect to look into. But whenever I work on something, whenever I think of a solution, I look at it that what is a bigger reason that we're trying to do again. So I go back to the thing that I want to give my users a good experience, right? So let's say, even if Google is not bothered about your speed rates, load speed and everything, what if you put all the efforts and you get a user onto the website, but when he clicks on the search result, which you are ranking on, let's say on position 1 or 0, but the website takes 10 seconds, 15 seconds to load on a mobile. No matter how long will you stay on that position, user is never going to land on your website because it's going to bounce off. As we don't have that attention span, we would quickly go to the next link. The user would go to the next link and click and open that the second link that is there after your website, and it will just bounce off even before reading the content on your page. So everything aside, whatever Google needs, I think it is, whenever you work on something, it's best to think about what is it that the user needs, and how we can improve that user experience. So hence, website speed becomes very, very critical in terms of a on-page factor. uh, so we'll look at it from two perspectives. One is the desktop side and one is the mobile side. And why I want to split this two is something I want to explain in the next slide. Okay, so this is an example. I think someone commented that you want to score above 90. This is a score that I pulled off in the morning. This is for one of the coupon pages that we have, which is, let's say, Amazon coupons in this case. And if you see, this is a desktop version. The speed is 95, and the AMP version, which I'll talk about, has a score of 93. And I think we have similar scores on the blog and the desktop and mobile phone on the blogs as well. Now, what you need to do to fix this website speed, and you need to look at these points. One, where is your server located? So you cannot have users sitting in India and have a server location of, let's say, US or Europe. There will be a latency that will have an impact. The server response time that is there will increase, which ideally should be less than 100 ms. Google has a tool which is Page Insight, Google Speed Insights, which is where I'm getting all this data from, and you can go and put your website over there and see what is the score. Third thing that we implement, which you can also implement, using plugins as well on WordPress, is caching. We use we use an AWS tool for caching, and everything in terms of CDN and everything. We use AWS. But in terms of WordPress, you can use plugins like WP Rocket and WP Optimize for server-side caching. So what this CDN does is, so let's say there's a user, so it makes copies of your website for fast rendering to the end user, which eventually reduces the load speed, the load time of your website, and hence it delivers faster. For particular mobile version, you need to implement something called AMP, which is Accelerate Mobile Pages. There is a plugin called AMP by Ahmed Khalon, something which we use, and it has given us very good results. There will be a little bit of design design compromise that you have to do when it comes to AMP version, but that is again for the betterment of your user, because without those elements, the page will load much faster, and because it is cached at Google servers, it'll be instantly loaded in the user's browser. So if you have a blog and if your user, check your Google Analytics, see where your users are coming from. If you have mobile users coming, which most of the cases these days is mobile traffic, and if you don't have AMP pages, it's a big blunder, and you should go and fix that tonight after this webinar. Fix that, and you will see a lot of jump in your rankings, a lot of jump in your user experience. Your bounce rate will go down and everything. So AMP is something that you should and you must implement right now if you are getting traffic from mobile. I've seen a lot of times people use multiple plugins for the sake of adding multiple functionality, but you need to see, you need to check the reviews of the plugin. You need to see, when you install that plugin, has your speed gone down, is your experience compromised in any way. So every time you add a plugin, please don't go on and add any plugin that you come across, any suggestion that you get from anyone around. You need to, and even if it's critical that you want to, you have to implement that plugin, you should install that plugin, activate that plugin, and go and check the page speed. And if there's a compromise in terms of load timing, I would suggest you knock that off for a while, find a better alternative, or find some other way without a plugin to implement that functionality. because I've seen these days, especially a lot of heavy plugins are there in the in the ecosystem, and they really kill the whole optimization scores. Again, there's something called minifying your CSS and JS. It's basically, in technical terms, if your CSS file is of some XKB, it will just remove the extra spaces in it and minify that entire thing into a smaller file, and hence reducing the load time, because the size of the file is much lesser. So again, that is something you can use WP Rocket for that on your blog. Image formats, this is again why is a big thing that I see on multiple blogs. For the sake of making it a good looking blog, they add a lot of images on the page. But if you have to use images, which of course we cannot just give a blank page to the user with only content, use formats like JPEG 2000, JPEG XR, or WebP, which are much better in terms of compression as compared to the usual formats like JPEG and PNG. And because it will be much more compressed, it means faster downloads and less data consumption, which means Google will be happy, which means you'll get a better ranking. So it's all interconnected. You cannot just leave one thing and work on the other things. It's all a part of the entire list of things that you have to do to ensure Google is happy with your page. Consider lazy loading of stream hidden images. So a lot of times, again, this is relative to blogs maybe that have a lot of images. You can consider something like a lazy loading on WordPress. You can use the plugins to do lazy loading. What happens is when the user is there on let's say the first view, it will only load images which are relevant to that particular view, and it will as the user scrolls down, it'll start loading images of that section of the blog or the post. And what happens is Google uses something called first paint timing. So the first paint paint that Google sees is what it defines as the load time of the website. So that is what you need to focus on. So these 8 pointers that I wrote on the left, if there are any questions, I can answer after the end of the session. But yes, just recapping all of them. One, you need to look at the server location. You need to to ensure that your response time, the server response time, is less than 100 ms. There are tools like Pingdom, there are tools like Page Insights and everything that will give you all these data. And in case a plugin is not helping, you should definitely talk to someone around you who has a let's say a technical knack, and he can tell you that this is how you can fix it. So for example, in our case, Khojdeal.com is a coupon and a cashback website. And then there is a blog of Khojdeal. So Khojdeal.com is not on WordPress. So we implement our own technical fixes to ensure that our load time and all that is slow. Load time is less. And in terms of the blog, we of course use the plugins like WP Rocket and all that to ensure that our page speed and the scores are well enough for Google. Coming to the schema, which is the structured data. So basically, what is structured data? It's like a language that Google and all these search engines understand. Think back, when we were in school, if someone tells you have to write an article on let's say any topic for that matter, the first thing I remember our teacher used to tell that you have to structure your content in a way that in terms of headings honi chahiye uske andar, you should have sub bullets, you should have sections which are well defined, so that when the teacher sits to check that and grade you, he or she is able to understand it in one view, and then they can dig into the sections that you have written. So now structured data is something very similar to that, but this is for the search engines of the world, which is Google, Bing, Yahoo, all of these people. And this is the way to tell the engines how you have structured your data in a technical language, so to say. There is a tool called Google, which you can, if you see the link on this, I have added a link over here, which is this one, search.google.com/test/rich results. You can actually go to this URL, put your blog post URL in that and see if your page is eligible or fit for those rich results. As you see, I added one of our links on this link to show you guys how the result comes up. I tested it today only to show you guys. So it says page is eligible for rich results, and when you click on this preview results, it will show you something like this, that how that rich result is coming. So what you see over here is something called FAQ schema, wherein so again, this is what I was talking about when it comes to schema. Now imagine there's a keyword, let's say best Bluetooth speakers, right? There is a result X ABC whatever.com, there's a result xyz.com, but there's a result that is showing you this much data. Plus, along with that, there is this section coming on that search result, which is showing the FAQs of that blog post. Now, again, this is where I tied back to the keyword research that we are doing. When we are doing that keyword research, it becomes important to see what are people searching for, and that is the kind of data, that's the kind of content that goes in this in terms of FAQ content. And using the plugins that I'm going to talk about in the next slide, we tell Google that, hey Google, we have written FAQs on our blog post, and we are telling you that this is a schema that we have implemented on the page. So why don't you show the results in a much better way? So so this is how our search results come on Google right now. It is not just the title and it's not just the meta that is there. It also comes along the top 3, 4, 5 questions based on the space that Google has, of which are added on that particular blog post, right? So I told you what is structured data. It's basically a technical schema. It's a syntax of code, which is basically used by all these search engines, and it's nothing but it's like an HTML, but it's like a tags and properties which we add to tell Google that how the structure is how the content is structured. How do we achieve on the website? We use this plugin called Rank Math, which is a very good plugin. We were earlier using Yoast, but then we moved to Rank Math, and we have seen good results. What you see on the right over here is basically a screenshot of one of the blog posts that we have written, which is something around smartwatch, and then this is how we add in that plugin. This is how we add content. One more thing which is special in Rank Math, which we didn't get in Yoast, is you can actually add hyperlinks in the content. This is something that was not there earlier, and this is how Rank Math helps us add that data. So you might say, it's a lot of effort. Why do we go and add this data in the FAQ and all of that? But imagine the CTR that you get on that search result if you have all these. If something like this comes up, and a user is bound to click on something like this as compared to a search result which will just have a title and a content over there. Because why is that so? Because again, understand the user psychology. When someone is searching for best Bluetooth speakers, definitely he would have much more questions than just having just trying to see what are the best Bluetooth speakers, right? So for example, even if I will click on this and see, okay, does Bluetooth sound loose quality? Is that something I should look at while buying a new speaker Bluetooth? That is there a specification that I should look at while I'm buying a Bluetooth speaker like that? So definitely, human mind is much more happier when you feed them data even before they ask for it, and that is what that is the whole principle that Google is working on. And when you support Google in that mission, Google likes you, and then Google says, okay, you're a good boy, you're trying to answer questions of users and you're providing them relevant information. Why don't you come on the top and tell these people what they're asking for? So this is how you have to implement. So FAQs is just one schema based on what kind of website you have, based on what kind of structure of content that you have. You can have multiple schemas. There is a product schema, and there are multiple other schemas. You can go to schema.org and read more about it, and you can see what schema is relevant for your website. So a little bit of impact that we see on the website. So this is data when we start implementing these things, and this is again real live example that is there, and I'm not even hiding the website. It's Khoshal.com. You can go on to the blogs and see what kind of content we are publishing, what kind of what kind of landing page experience that we're giving to the user who's coming on the page. This is from some 3 different blog posts that we see. For example, look at this one. Starting this, and suddenly there is a jump, and this is all the result that from the things that I've shown you in the webinar so far. Implementing schemas, reducing page load speed, putting a structure to the content, adding keywords that are much more relevant to the user, and all these things. One more thing I wanted to show. So this is an example of a new post. So if you see the date over here, it's 25th Feb 2020, where we published the content and we just left it for a while, and we see gradually that in the span of 25th Feb, which is, let's say, almost March, and this is April, where you see the peak of this. This is the impact of things that happen when you do proper. This is a blog post which has zero backlinking right now. It is a blog post which is just published on the website. It is a blog post which is published and just left on the website. But if you are doing things right, if you are doing the basic principles that I've told you in this webinar in the right manner, you will get a lot of authority from Google. You will get a lot of respect from Google, because as you must be seeing now, with every algo update that is coming, Google is coming with some or the other penalty, and ultimately whenever update comes in, one thing that remains constant in every update is that websites that are trying, or that are genuinely adding value to the end user, answering their queries, trying to be relevant, trying to stay updated, trying to give them the latest information around that topic, they never go out of fashion. So again, I come back to the whole mindset thing. If you want to do something like this, come with the mindset of building a brand. Doesn't matter what niche you are in. It can be a niche of selling indoor plants. It can be a niche of selling a SaaS product. It can be a niche of selling e-commerce products. It can be a niche of selling coupons like we do. It can be selling, it can be an Amazon affiliate website. It can be anything. But then prepare yourself to be in this for a long term, and prepare yourself to build a brand with the right strategies, and with the right white hat techniques, so to say, when it comes to jargon, and ensure that you're doing all things right to leave an impact which is long lasting, and not just things that you just do to rank quickly for a few days. So we do a lot of experiments. In fact, one of the experiments that we did last month, before this lockdown thing happened, is we launched a website which had we just implemented some plugins which was automatically posting content on the website, and within I think 20 days we started getting traffic onto the website, and we were getting traffic for keywords that we would have never thought we'll get without. And this is without any link building, without any domain authority, without anything for that matter. So we keep on doing such experiments, and that is the whole point of being in the digital marketing space, and especially when it comes to SEO. Things change, very often. Things change every month, things change every week. But if your basics are strong, if your website follows the right set of rules, you can keep on adding layers of quick win techniques. You can keep on adding layers of black hat techniques, or whatever you want to do, but ensure the basic principles, the basic things that your website is standing upon, they are rock solid. Even in case, let's say, you tomorrow, for some god damn reason, you get a penalty because of something that Google considers wrong, if your basics are solid, if your website has authority which has been built because of these basics that I just spoke upon, Google also understands that, and the chances of you getting that website back out of the penalty are much higher. So yeah, I think that's what I wanted to share with you guys. There is so much on the topic that can be spoken upon, but I just wanted to touch upon the very the topics that are very relevant, and very high impacting. So I think I will open for questions now. Let me just pull out the questions. Saharsh, are you there? I think if you can.
Yeah, tell me. Vaibhav, how
Yeah.
can I help you?
Do you wanna lead the questions, or do you want me to go through them one by one?
One by one, and you can explain it as well so that it is better, like that.
Okay, sure.
So there is a question from Kapil Iyer. From there, you can start.
Just 1 second. I think one long thing that I see is Harshit. Please help me finding my mistake in this approach so that I can improve. Okay, that's a long way. It's a WordPress e-commerce site with 7 niche products. Our DA was 1. We wrote 47 articles on the blog following every guideline of Yoast SEO. Plugin, we took high volume. We also wrote 10-20 blog posts, having tried the approach, experiment, RDS in 17. However, the product and the rest of the pages were ranking. I think Harshit, I've read your question quickly, but I think what you can do is, as I spoke about, creating much more content which act like supporting articles for your main product pages. That will really help you. In fact, we have seen that helping us in ways that we could never imagine earlier. We have seen, when we're trying to rank a blog post, which is a very high competition blog post keyword, we do a lot of supporting things, supporting articles, which help us eventually, what they call pass the juice to the main article, and it starts ranking. So maybe I don't see a problem in the structure that you're following, but maybe in terms of content strategy, something that you can do and it will help you. Going on to the next. Kick aa gaya bhai. First step itself is love. Thank you, Chaitanya. Sanjay says super duper. Kapil says, how many times we should use primary and secondary keywords in an article or product description? So guys, I see a lot of people ask this question on groups and forums everywhere, that what should be the number of keywords, what should be the number of words I should write in an article. The thing is that, again, don't think of it as a machine. Don't think of it that you want to fool Google. Think of it that you're a partner to Google, wherein Google's ultimate aim is to provide value to the end users and give answers to the people's questions, right? So rather than thinking how many keywords we should add, how many words we should add, you should think about what is the user searching for, and if your content kind of answers all those queries, or if your set of post answers all those queries, you will not have to worry about all of this, right? Having said that, if you talk about exact number or a range of primary secondary keywords, primary keywords are usually 1 or 2, because you're trying to rank for a keyword that has a lot of volume, so you cannot target multiple high volume keywords in one post. Ideally, one primary keyword should have one blog post linked to it, which means if someone is searching for on your website, if you want to rank a post that says best on-page SEO tools, you should have one. You should tell Google that this is the page we want to rank on this one keyword. Secondary keywords can be, again, dependent on what kind of content is there and what are the people searching for. So I really would not have an answer to that. Usually, I think when we write content, usually a primary keyword would have 10 to 20 secondary keywords, and then there are multiple supporting keywords that go in that thing. So that is how maybe I can answer this question. Putting keywords in bold and italic still helps. See, again, when you talk about things like does it still help, so a lot of people say meta description doesn't help. Google says they don't look at the meta description and all of that. So the point is, you should not just do things for Google, you should do things for your user. So if your information can be structured in a much better manner, if it is written in bold and italic, it will help. It will definitely help. If it won't help in getting the traffic, it will help in holding the traffic and reducing your bounce rate. And guess what? Reducing bounce rate increases your authority and increases your respect in eyes of Google, and ultimately you will start ranking better. So again, I think Harshit, a lot of you have to think of it as a user and start writing content or start structuring the content in that manner. Next question from Harshit: in silo structure, we can't always add link of the article on our homepage. How to go about that? I think the structure should be like this: that if you have, let's say, 3 supporting articles for a main article that you want to rank on, you should give a link to one supporting article, and those supporting articles should be linked amongst each other. That kind of ensures the right structure is there. I can probably send you some details later and what you can read about it, or you can just research and you can find multiple resources that will tell you how to properly structure that thing. So that's that. But yeah, we do follow that. So one target page, let's say we link it, and if there are 3 supporting articles, we would link it to one of the supporting articles, and then those supporting articles are linked amongst each other. That has helped us big time. Rank Math is quite vulnerable in terms of getting hacked, which plugin we use to fulfill the article keyword density and all the things. Varnit, in terms of plugins, I think just like the whole digital marketing space, a lot of things keep on changing in this thing. So even Rank Math had an issue earlier, and that is when we moved to Yoast, and then we came back to Rank Math. So this keeps on happening. But yes, I think if you need an answer to which plugin do you want to fulfill article keyword density and all that, I'll get back to you because again, as I said, we do a lot of things as a team, and maybe I'll just circle back internally and tell you which exact plugin maybe you can try on your website. I shared with you what is working for us, and so far we've not faced any issue. But if you feel you want to look for some other plugin, maybe you can I'll start a thread. I think after this webinar, Sash can do that, and I can answer questions on that. How can we auto post content? Chitransh, maybe that's a topic we can pick up some other webinar that is not to do with that. Ideally, I don't suggest posting auto content, again, because when you post auto content, it clearly means it's a duplicated content from multiple other sources that you're picking from. So I would not suggest that. What I shared with you was an example that we did on a different website, not on Kojal.com. Because of course Kojal.com for us is a brand, and we don't do any shitty stuff on that. But if you were interested in running some other blogs which you just want to experiment for experiment's sake, I can probably tell you offline what we do over there. That's fine with me. Sumit says, I tried implementing AMP on site, but after some time started to get some error in Search Console. So Sumit, yes, I think you need to fix that. I cannot help you without seeing what is the error that you see in Search Console. But this plugin that we're using, thankfully, has not created much issues for us. And maybe, yes, because we have a technical team in-house and everything, we don't get stuck. But if you're not able to find that answer from anywhere else, you can just ping me on Facebook, and I'll just arrange something to help you out, and maybe I can solve that issue for you. Mayank says, what about internal links? Do they have a major impact on on-page SEO? Can you give some pointers? Yes, Mayank, definitely. Internal link structure has an impact on SEO. Again, Google likes, so how does Google know that the content that you're writing is a good content, right? Google understands contextual keywords, Google understands supporting keywords, but ultimately the game is in the hand of the users. If the user is coming on the website and just bouncing off in 10 seconds, it is a clear indication to Google that the content that is written on the website is not good, and hence people are bouncing off so quickly. What internal links help you with is reducing that bounce rate. That's one from a user's perspective. Second is it helps in terms of Google's algo's perspective or machine perspective. As I gave you the example of that teacher, right? When we were in school, everyone likes information to be in a structured manner. And the more structured that data is, the more helpful it is for a machine to interpret, for a human to interpret, and for all of us to interpret. and that is why internal links add a lot of value. And one more reason is that not all your pages on the website will have the same authority. A domain has an authority, and then your multiple page on the website has different authority, right? So one way to pass that authority, or to tell Google that, okay, this is a page A with authority, and now I have published pages B and C also, and I want to get some authority to those pages, is the best way to link these pages to the authority page. And that is when Google starts understanding, okay, this is also from the same family, and starts adding much more value to that. So maybe that maybe that answers your question. That is the impact that this has on the whole Google thing. Great session. Do you think content ranks? One question I missed: what do you observe from recent algo update? So Preetham, I think every algo update, we see, sometimes we see a dip in a couple of rankings, sometimes we see a increase in a couple of rankings. But again, as I mentioned in the webinar, that if the content is answering all the users' questions, if the content is adding value, I think your algo updates are something that can be managed easily, unless you have a very bad luck and something goes out of the way suddenly. But most of the answers lie in giving users what they want, and as long as you're trying to do that, Google remains happy, and Google would never touch you for doing anything good. So that's what. Awesome. Couple great session. AK, do you think the content ranks on new website as it ranks on old site? No. So AK, to answer this, I think definitely the authority of the domain definitely helps in multiple ways. Because let's say you have a high authority website, one of the things that happen when you have a high authority website is Google comes to crawl you much often as compared to the low authority website. And the fact that Google comes to crawl you better, which means you get indexed faster, which ultimately there's a whole chain that happens. So to answer your question, do you think content ranks on new website as it ranks on the old website? There is a difference, and definitely old websites with authority have an edge on that for sure. Dinesh says informative, sir. Thank you, Dinesh. Kapil, what would be the article word size? What would be the article word size, more than 1,000 words or below 1,000? Again, it depends on the industry that you're writing in. Go check. So any keyword that you want to write an article on, go check the competition. There are different kind of content posts, right? So one other error that we've seen around is some people try to rank a different kind of article on a keyword. So for example, in our case, let's say Amazon coupons is one of the keyword that we want to rank on. We see multiple Amazon coupons. The search results that we see are websites that have listed coupons and everything. We cannot then attempt in having a listicle on that, right? So Google understands the user, and Google understands when someone is searching Amazon coupons, they are looking for a list of coupons on that blog page, and hence it becomes a default template for that Google's query, that when someone searches for Amazon coupons or X coupons, it will give value to the website which has a list of those things, as compared to, let's say, someone searches top 10 refrigerators. Now this is a listicle, this is a long content form sort of a post. So Google really understands, and Google assigns the kind of post that will rank for multiple kind of queries. So I think that should answer. Article word size, I can give you our example. When we write blog post, like I just told you, we do write 800 to 1000, sometimes 1500 word article, depending on how we structure the content, depending on how many queries does the user have around that keyword. But when it comes to, let's say, coupon pages, we write I think around 800 words content on that, and that suffices the need of this. Can you explain more deep about Google Ads? Kapil Ahir says, can you explain a little more deep about Google Ads or keywords? So Kapil, let's say you wanna, okay, so let me give an example of Amazon coupons, right? So let's say you want to rank a page which is for the query for that page is Amazon coupons. Now, in terms of doing the keyword research, of course, there are tools that will give you what kind of keywords are there around that. One of the things that we do, we will go to Google, we'll launch a campaign with the phrase match Amazon coupons and take that ad live on any page, or let's say our Amazon coupon page. And then what happens is, because it's in the phrase match, I hope you understand the difference between broad, phrase, and exact. So when I say phrase match, so Amazon coupons should be in that search query as it is. So what happens is people start searching for keywords like Amazon coupons for refrigerator. Now that's a keyword that I got. And I know if a user is coming for this kind of a keyword, I have to show him a coupon which is relevant to electronics category in Amazon, right? I get keywords like Amazon coupons for students, Amazon coupons for new user, Amazon coupons for Bangalore. We see such keywords coming in the search results. So the tools that we have, Ahref, SEMrush, all these tools, although they give very good data and they have a good historical database and everything, if you want to see real keywords, or let's say live keywords that people are searching for, the best way is to launch an ad, give it 500 rupees and see, put a low bid on it on a phrase match, let's say 50 paisa, and you will get good amount of keywords in the search terms section, and you will know what kind of keywords you should include in your content. Okay, so I think I answered all the questions. I'll be happy if there is anything else you guys want to know. Sarsh, maybe you can put a thread. If people have questions, they can post over there.
Definitely.
And I can answer them gradually, whenever we get time.
Okay. Cool. I will post a thread about the feedback and everything, and people can ask your questions there.
Yes.
Guys, since all of you attended a webinar, it will be very good if you can share the feedback and encourage more and more speakers to come on board and keep sharing whatever we are doing, so that we can bring a lot of people in.
Thank you, guys. While I was doing the questions, I saw some really good feedback. I hope it was helpful for all of you. I hope that you take some of these tips and go and implement on your blog and see the results. I'll be happy, as I said to Sarsh, I'll be happy to answer questions. You can post it on the group, and I would love if you share that feedback on the group. It will be I would know what to share more with you. And maybe next time we can talk about off page, or maybe we can pick up some more topics from the slide that I shared, and maybe dwell more on that. So yeah.
So guys, the idea currently is like we are going through basics first, and later based on feedback and questions, we'll invite the same speaker to come bring on more advanced version of that. So that's the plan as of now. So the more feedback we get, the more questions we get. Based on that, we can plan the further events, further sessions as well.
Right. Thank you so much, guys. And Sarsh, I would like to thank you before we end the session. Thank you for arranging all of this, and thank you for arranging this series of webinars. I'm sure it's helpful for a lot of people around, and you guys are doing a great job. And thanks for keeping the community alive so much. So great job on that as well.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for volunteering. And so
we
need a lot of volunteers like that.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Bye. Good evening. Bye.
Thank you for joining us. And don't forget to join our group and subscribe for more.